Incredible moment, Billionaire discovers Black Maid's heartwarming act of protecting his father. Jack Harrison woke up to another day filled with numbers, trades, and empire building. His sprawling mansion echoed with the silence of empty rooms, where the only company was the sound of a clock ticking relentlessly, reminding him that while his wealth soared, something significant was missing. He was blind to the small, steadfast figure working tirelessly to maintain the vestiges of his childhood home. Mary Johnson, a single mother, poured her heart into cleaning the aging mansion, while juggling 2 jobs just to feed her kids. The stark divide between them was lost on Jack, absorbed in the whirlwinds of elite charity galas and exclusive retreats that had come to define his life. Unbeknownst to him, Mary had been a silent hero, slipping barefoot past plush carpets to visit his father, a proud war veteran in his 90s, who waged his daily battle against loneliness. In the shadows of Jack's world, Mary made meals and shared stories, a tender hand reaching into his father's void and filling it with warmth. Yet Jack remained clueless, his life dictated by stock market charts and high-stakes negotiations, leaving no room for the simple, yet profound acts of kindness happening just beyond his notice point. One afternoon, Jack stumbled across a text message on his father's phone, a simple picture of a home-cooked meal captioned, "Can't wait to see you again." It sent his heart racing. It was Mary's number. Who was she to invade his father's space? Clenching his fists, he marched down to confront her. What erupted was a clash of worlds. Jack was met with Mary's quiet resilience, a fire burning behind her soft gaze. "I'm just trying to help," she said, the weight of countless burdens in her voice. At that moment, Jack's heart raced, wrestling with emotions he'd long tucked away. Who was he, really? As they argued, past prejudices collided, and painfully hidden truths spilled out. This woman, who he had viewed only as an employee, was transforming his father's existence. It shook him to his core. Mary's hands, calloused yet tender, cradled the stories of a community he had shut out, the laughter of children, their dreams, and the sacrifices made for a better life. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The confrontation lit a spark in Jack, fueling an internal struggle. He recalled his father's tales of warriors in battle, connected not by ranks or uniforms, but by brotherhood. Mary personified that spirit, living honorably, valuing community over elitism. As he drove to the community charity event of the year, a pivotal moment loomed. In the ballroom filled with suits and polished facades, he felt the weight of an unspoken truth. With all eyes on the stage, Jack cleared his throat, ready to challenge the very foundations of their narrow perceptions. To those who unknowingly dismiss the worth of others, let us not forget the strength of our community rests in its heart, the generosity of a woman who cared deeply for my father. His voice shook with the weight of his realization. But before he could continue, a skeptical voice called from the back, "What do you really know about her, Jack? Is this genuine or just another show?" Every eye turned to him, anticipation hanging thick in the air. The question pierced through his bravado, and an unsettling reality dawned. Acknowledgement isn't enough. Will he take a step beyond the shadows of privilege and truly prove his intentions? The room held its breath, teetering on the edge of change. The weight of silence in the ballroom was suffocating. Jack's heart raced as he searched for an answer, for something to say that would resonate with the crowd. The faces staring back at him, a mix of curiosity, judgment, and skepticism, felt like an ocean of pressure pressing down. He swallowed hard. "I know more than you think," he said, with a determination that surprised even him. "Mary has been there for my father when I wasn't. She's given him companionship and care when I got lost in my own world." As murmurs rippled through the audience, he caught sight of Mary across the room. She stood there, arms crossed, unsure, her brow furrowed. A flicker of vulnerability crossed her face, but quickly morphed into resolve. He could tell she hadn't expected him to speak up, and maybe, just maybe, she needed him to, Jack continued, feeling the moment shift beneath him. We've built a society that often forgets the individuals who quietly work to make it better. It's time for us to recognize that everyone has a story worth telling. He glanced back towards Mary, his voice softening. And I want to hear hers. His words seemed to hang in the air before the audible surprise took shape, a mix of disbelief and intrigue as he unfolded the truth about his father's interaction with her. She had been a lifeline, more than just an employee. She connected with him at a time when Jack let his ambitions drown out family. The realization was sobering. The crowd shifted as he shared how he stumbled upon the first text message, how it shook him to his core. Faces began to soften, the walls of prejudice slowly crumbling. And, he added, taking a deep breath as he sensed momentum building, I'm here to invite us all to change that. All of us, including me. I want to understand the lives surrounding us that are often overlooked. The people who dedicate their lives to those in need. Applause started slowly but began to build, washing over him like a wave of warmth. He dared to meet Mary's gaze, her expression a mixture of surprise and something more profound, perhaps hope. They both felt an invisible tether begin to form between them. Before he knew it, the room was alive with conversation, a dialogue sparked from his declaration. They weren't just whispering about the maid, they were beginning to discuss the realities of their community. Jack couldn't remember the last time he felt this connected to people, especially those from worlds different than his own, but as the applause subsided, the reality of his next steps loomed. This couldn't just be an empty promise. Mary wasn't just a name, not just a story, she was a part of a greater narrative he now needed to understand. As ongoing conversations filled the air, Jack's mind raced. What were the next steps? How could he reach out to Mary, to engage her world without intruding? And more importantly, how could he build bridges not just with her, but with all the others who needed recognition and respect? Lost in his thoughts, he didn't notice the figure approaching him until she spoke. Jack, Mary said, her voice steady but edged with emotion, are you ready for what that means? Her question hung between them, charged with new potential. How could he answer? The truth was he didn't know what it meant, but one thing was clear. He was ready to find out. Next chapter, what would it take for Jack to step fully into Mary's world, and could he bridge the gap that had kept them apart for so long? Jack felt the air shift as Mary's words echoed in his mind. The moment hung there, thick with unspoken questions. He opened his mouth to respond, but the words got stuck somewhere between his heart and his tongue. Am I ready? He repeated softly, not really asking her but more trying to convince himself. He glanced back at the crowd, who seemed to be waiting, electric with curiosity, wanting him to say something profound. His heart thudded like a drum, an almost panicked rhythm. Mary watched him closely, her eyes searching for sincerity. It's not just about talking, Jack. It's about understanding what you're stepping into, she said, her voice firm yet gentle. You really want to hear my story? You want to know about the lives of those you've overlooked? He nodded, determination flooding through him. Yes. Yes, I do. Mary swallowed, her exterior still tough, but he could see the cracks. This was not just an opportunity for him to change, it was an invitation for her to share her life, the struggles, the heartbreaks, the invisible roles she played for so many people. Then we should talk, she said, finally uncrossing her arms, taking a small step closer. But know this, it's not going to be easy. The world you live in and the one I come from, they're galaxies apart. His throat felt tight with anticipation and fear. I'm willing to meet you there. Just show me how. A flicker of something, maybe it was trust, passed between them. Mary's expression softened just a bit. Okay. But it starts small. The details matter. Can I count on you to keep your mind open? More than anything, Jack promised, the sincerity of it puncturing the tension that had been building. Mary nodded slightly and, for the first time, offered a genuine smile. It was hesitant but bright, lighting up the corners of the ballroom. Let us begin with where it all started, she said, looking out at the crowd, still abuzz from his speech. Maybe we can find some common ground. Jack felt a rush of relief wash over him. Maybe, just maybe, they could navigate the complicated waters of their lives together. He didn't just want to hear her story, he wanted to be a part of it. For too long, he had watched from the sidelines, allowing ambition to drown out what truly mattered. As he took a step closer to her, the energy in the room shifted again. Conversation simmered quietly around them as people turned their attention to the duo, intrigued by this newfound connection. They were no longer simply a wealthy man and his father's caregiver, they were two souls beginning to connect. "Let us go somewhere quieter," Mary suggested, glancing toward a side exit that led to a small garden patio. "It's easier to speak when the world isn't listening." Jack nodded, heart racing with both excitement and trepidation, as she led the way. They slipped outside, the cool night air refreshing against the warmth of the ballroom. He breathed in deeply, hoping he was making the right choice. Underneath the stars, away from prying eyes, he felt something in him stir a spark of hope and courage. But as they began to converse, words exchanged in the shadows, questions bubbled just beneath the surface. What challenges would they face as they uncovered the layers of their lives? Would they both truly be ready for the truths they were about to confront? As they shared the first truths about their lives, a feeling gnawed at him, a lingering doubt about whether he could bridge the gap that had kept them apart for so long. Would their stories mesh, or tear them further apart? Jack couldn't shake the apprehension as they approached this delicate new chapter in both their lives. The night was just beginning, but what awaited them beyond their shared confessions? More importantly, when would they be ready to confront the difficult truths lurking in their pasts? The garden was quiet, the soft glow of moonlight filtering through the leaves, casting playful shadows on the cobblestone path. Jack felt the weight of the world lift slightly as he took in the beauty around him. It was a stark contrast to the lavish ballroom he had just left, filled with false smiles and hollow conversations. This felt real. Mary leaned against a wrought iron railing, her eyes reflecting starlight as she gathered her thoughts. Jack silently admired her strength, the way she held herself without a trace of the uncertainty that plagued him. "Do you remember the first time you realized people saw you differently?" Her voice broke through his reverie, low and thoughtful. Jack hesitated. "I guess I've always had that feeling, but I never put much thought into it. I was too focused on being the best. It wasn't until recently that I saw what that meant for others." Mary nodded, as if his words were part of a puzzle she had been trying to solve. "I grew up knowing that people saw me for my skin, not for who I was. It shaped everything. Made me determined to be someone worth hearing, you know." Her words hung in the air, and Jack felt a pang of guilt. How often had he overlooked the worth of those on the invisible edges of his world? He cleared his throat, still grappling with the enormity of their conversation. "Tell me more," he urged gently. Mary shifted, her gaze distant. "I worked multiple jobs to support my family. I went from being a kid in school, getting teased about my lunch, to being a caregiver, a person who looked after someone else's family. I poured everything into that, even when I was treated like I was invisible." Jack felt heat rise in his chest. He had seen her in those roles, always there yet disappearing into the background. I never thought about it like that. I just saw you doing your job." A small, sad smile crossed her lips. "That's the thing. People often don't see what's behind the roles we play, Jack. I kept hoping that by doing my job well, I could change the way people saw me. But it never really worked." Silence enveloped them, as the weight of her truth sank in. Jack's chest tightened. He wanted to reach out, to show her he recognized her value, but he feared he might only make things worse. What if we could change that? He found the courage to say, his voice steady. "What if I could use my position to lift voices like yours? Help people see beyond the surface?" Mary's eyebrows raised, surprise etched on her face. "You do that? You really mean it?" "I want to," he replied earnestly. "Not to save anyone, but to show that we are all connected. Maybe this wouldn't change everything overnight, but it's a start." A flicker of hope sparked in Mary's eyes, and for a moment, the shadows faded. But then she sighed, her brow furrowing again. What happens when this conversation ends? People want to change just because we want them to. You're walking away with this after tonight, but I have to go back to my reality. Jack felt a chill run through him at her words. It was easier to talk about change than to make it happen. They stood there, surrounded by the fragrances of night-blooming jasmine, the weight of their shared worlds pressing close. He thought of his father, the man who had ignored the quiet struggles of the people around him while basking in privilege. Could he confront that? As hope wavered, the moon cast another beam across Mary's face, illuminating the complexity there. You need to realize this isn't just about us, it's about everyone who feels unseen, unheard. He swallowed hard, aware of the mounting challenge before him. Then let us make this conversation count, he declared. Mary studied him carefully, her facade cracking just a bit more. She stepped closer, their shared space thick with potential. What if they could each be the catalyst for real change? What if this was more than just words traded in a garden? The answer hung in the air like a promise. Jack could feel it brewing between them, the electric charge of possibility. But he couldn't ignore the nagging fear. Would their worlds ever truly converge? Suddenly, a noise from the ballroom disrupted their moment, laughter spilling into the night from inside. As the sound faded, Jack couldn't shake the feeling. They were perched on the edge of something monumental, but would they dare to leap into the unknown? Jack's heart raced, caught in the tension of the moment. The laughter from the ballroom felt like a distant echo, a world they both knew but now seemed so separate from the truth they were exploring. He shifted closer to Mary, wanting to bridge that gap, wanting to prove that their worlds didn't have to remain insurmountable. Listen, he said, determination creeping into his voice. What if I organized a community event? A place where stories like yours can be shared openly. Where people can listen, learn. Not just from me, but from everyone. It could be a start. Mary laughed softly, but there was a touch of disbelief in her eyes. You think it'll be that easy? Just a night in the park with some speakers and poof. Everyone sees us for who we really are. No, he sighed, running a hand through his hair. I know it won't be easy. But we need to start somewhere. Real change, lasting change, it always begins with a conversation. I can use my platform, my resources. But I can't do it alone. There was a flicker of something vulnerable in her expression. What if it doesn't make a difference? What if no one listens? Her voice trembled slightly, revealing the fear that dwelled beneath her steadfast exterior. Jack stepped in closer, his eyes locking onto hers. Then we'll keep talking. We'll find a way to get people to listen. I won't stop just because it's hard. You deserve to be heard, Mary. For a moment, uncertainty wavered in the air between them, hanging heavy like humidity on a summer's night. But then he saw it, a glimmer of hope reflected back at him from her gaze, mixing with the shadows. Okay, she agreed slowly, her words measured but filled with possibility. I'll help you organize the event. But you have to promise me it won't just be for show. It has to mean something. We need to connect personally, not just speak to an audience. I promise, he assured, feeling a rush of excitement course through him. The enormity before them felt almost palpable, like the crackling energy before a storm. Mary smiled faintly, transforming the weight of their earlier conversation into something lighter, something with wings. Let us just make it real then. For everyone. We'll see how many hearts we can change. As they stood, wrapping their minds around the enormity of their plans, Mary took a deep breath, her expression shifting to concentration. I have some ideas already. We could reach out to. Before she could finish, a sudden blast of music burst forth from the ballroom, cutting through their moment like a knife. Jack jumped slightly at the sharpness of the sound, but his mind stayed focused. Let us get out of here, he said, urgency bleeding through his words. We can talk more where it's quieter. Mary nodded, determination settling in her features. They moved away from the eerie glow of the ballroom lights, seeking the refuge of the garden's depths. As they walked deeper into the tangled pathways of blooming plants and quiet corners, Jack felt a shift within him, the kind of shift that signified commitment. The sound of the laughter faded into the background, a reminder of the world they were stepping away from. Their mission had just begun, and with each step back into the cool darkness, he could practically taste the flavor of change. But there was still an underlying question tugging at his mind: how far could they push beyond their boundaries? Would the facade of societal roles give way to authenticity? Just ahead, a small gathering of flowers captured their attention. Amidst the blossoms stood a solitary figure, seemingly lost in thought. Someone else who was waiting. And before Jack could even register who it was, Mary's face paled. "Jack," she whispered, her voice barely rising above a breath. "We need to be careful. Not everyone will be supportive of this." As realization dawned, the urgency of their cause settled like a thick fog. Jack's heart hammered in his chest as he turned to face the figure, his instincts flaring. The soft moonlight illuminated the face of Theodore, the very man who had once cast shadows over Mary's life. He stood there, an air of confusion mingling with curiosity, the echoes of the ballroom barely reaching his ears. "Mary," he said, voice steady but low. "Is that—" "Keep your voice down," she interjected, her eyes darting around as if expecting company. "He doesn't know what we're discussing." Theodore's brow furrowed as he regarded them. A moment passed, thick with unsaid words, and Jack could feel the weight of it. Doubt hung in the air like the scent of rain before a storm. "What are you two doing out here?" Theodore asked, that familiar authoritative edge creeping into his tone. Mary took a deep breath, standing taller. "We're having a conversation about community, about sharing experiences that matter." "Let me guess, it's about your so-called struggles." Theodore's voice sharpened, his skepticism palpable. Jack could see Mary tense beside him. "Why does it bother you so much?" Jack blurted, stepping forward almost instinctively. "Mary's story matters. The truth matters. Your privileged view doesn't give you the right to dismiss that." Theodore's expression darkened. "You don't understand how the world works, boy. It's easy to have grand ideas when you don't live in the reality others face. You want change. You better be ready for the consequences." "Be ready for what?" Jack shot back, his heart racing for a different reason now. "Your disapproval. Or are you scared of what those consequences might be for yourself?" "Jack, stop," Mary warned, her voice a mixture of fear and urgency. "If this escalates—" Jack took a breath, trying to steady himself. He didn't want to ruin their chances before they even got started. "We're trying to create a safe space. It's important for her voice to be heard. That's not a bad thing." Theodore crossed his arms, his face a mask of skepticism and annoyance. "I'll do whatever it takes to keep my family from being pulled into this mess. They don't want to hear what Mary has to say, nor should they. But you don't get to decide that for her." Jack's voice broke slightly, a waver of frustration lurking beneath it. "Who are you to dictate whose voice deserves to be heard?" A moment of silence stretched between them, heavy and unnerving. Theodore's gaze shifted to Mary, whose eyes were glassy, emotions swirling just below the surface. "Why are you putting yourself in this position, Mary?" Theodore asked, suddenly softer, surprisingly vulnerable. "You could avoid all of this pain. Because pain is part of truth." She replied fiercely, her voice ringing with clarity. "And I'm tired of hiding. If we don't talk about it, nothing ever changes." Her words lingered like a charged current, and for a moment, Jack felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this was the moment when Theodore would understand, but instead, Theodore's face hardened again, and he shook his head. "You're playing a dangerous game. And when it comes crashing down, don't say I didn't warn you." Mary looked deflated, but Jack could see the fire still flickering in her eyes. "Dangerous or not," she said lowly, "it's worth it. I'm not afraid of the truth. As they turned to leave, Jack felt an unsettling mix of determination and worry settling around him like a blanket. The stakes had suddenly grown, and bruises would surely follow. Could they truly muster the courage to push through this darkness? With the fading music echoing behind them, Jack grasped Mary's hand, squeezing it tightly. They were in this together, regardless of the outcome. "Let us head back," he said, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "We have a lot to prepare for. The event, it might end up being more than we thought." Mary nodded with fierce determination shining through the uncertainty. "Yes. We're doing this for everyone who feels like they don't have a voice. No matter the risks." As they walked on, Jack's heart raced. What lay ahead felt monumental, but the fear of failure loomed just as large. Would the world truly be ready to listen? Ahead, the path twisted into shadows, and behind them, Theodore's voice drifted like a haunting whisper. "You have no idea what you're getting into." What would that truth reveal when they finally found the courage to face it? The next day came too soon for Jack. As dawn broke, he felt the weight of what lay ahead pressing on his chest. They'd agreed to host a gathering, a platform for Mary to share her story. Jack had formulated a plan, hoping it would resonate with the community. But doubts continued to swirl in his mind like autumn leaves in a gust of wind. What if it doesn't go as we hope? He muttered to himself, taking a sip of lukewarm coffee. The kitchen table was littered with flyers, scribbled notes, and a defiant sense of purpose mingled with anxiety. The ticking clock seemed to amplify his worries. Mary bustled into the room, hair tumbling in loose waves, her eyes bright but betraying a hint of apprehension. "Hey, we can't keep second-guessing ourselves. Today is about more than just us. It's important." Jack searched her face, drawing comfort from her strength. "I know. It's just that Theodore, his words still echo in my mind." Mary sat down across from him, hands clasped. "He is scared, Jack. He knows the power of stories. They can change hearts, communities, even the course of lives." Her gaze softened, and she leaned in. "That's what frightens him. If people hear the truth, they might not like what they discover. But we can't let fear dictate our choices." "Right." Jack nodded, feeling a surge of faith. "Let us make it count." The venue was buzzing with life as they set up the small community center. Colorful banners swayed gently, welcoming faces filled with curiosity and uncertainty. Jack felt alive amidst the chatter, fueled by anticipation as he arranged folding chairs in a semicircle. The clock sank toward the hour, and Jack steadied his breathing as Mary prepared at the front. Her presence radiated a warmth that echoed through the crowd. He caught sight of familiar faces, friends and strangers alike, all there to bear witness to Mary's moment. When she finally stepped forward, silence enveloped the room. Jack's heart danced nervously in his chest as Mary took a breath, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "Thank you all for being here. I come before you today with my truth, my story." With every word that followed, Jack felt as if Mary was weaving a spell. She spoke of struggles, resilience, and community. Her voice grew stronger, igniting flickers of recognition in those listening. The courage she had summoned became infectious. Jack watched people lean forward, eyes glistening like they held their breath for each revelation. He felt solidarity blossom in the room, a sense of connection forming like an invisible thread binding their souls together, yet, amid this connection, an unsettling stir began to rise in a corner. Jack noticed a tense figure. Theodore had slipped into the back unnoticed. The lingering skepticism in his stance was palpable, his arms crossed tightly against his chest. Jack's heart sank, the weight of potential conflict hung in the air. As Mary reached a poignant moment in her narrative, detailing a heart-wrenching intertwine of hope and heartbreak, Jack felt the tension swell. He glanced back at Theodore, who stood rigid, lips pressed into a thin line. Would this be the moment when the divide fractured? But Mary pressed on, unyielding in her resolve. "I realize my voice is a tool for change. We can choose truth over silence. A ripple of applause erupted, echoing through the hall. And yet, Jack caught the faintest hint of hesitation flickering in Theodore's eyes. As applause mingled with murmurs of encouragement, Jack felt a grappling urge to confront Theodore, to challenge the man who once sought to silence Mary's truth. Yet the air was thick with anticipation, and the moment felt fragile. With a wave of emotion washing over him, Jack knew he couldn't stay merely a bystander. The next step would be crucial. Would he risk confronting Theodore, opening that door to conflict, or let it simmer while Mary's voice lifted everyone up? The crowd's energy surged, and Mary's gaze met Jack's solemn yet encouraging. He could feel the tremors of a pivotal moment swirling around him, and then, as if sensing his inner turmoil, Theodore moved toward the exit. Jack's heart raced. Would he let Theodore slip away, or would he seize this chance to bridge the chasm? As he took a step forward, he knew one thing: today was just the beginning, and the real challenge was about to unfold. Jack moved with purpose towards Theodore, determination boiling inside him. The crowd's applause faded, their focus shifting unknowingly between Mary's radiant presence and the brewing conflict at the back. He took a deep breath, his heart pounding with both fear and bravery. "Hey, Theodore. Can we talk for a second?" Jack called out, his voice surprisingly steady. The room seemed to hold its breath as Theodore paused, his hands dropping to his sides, resignation washing over his face. As Theodore turned slowly, Jack felt every eye upon him. The chatter stilled, anticipation electrifying the air. Mary's voice echoed in his mind an encouragement to confront fear not just for himself but for a community longing for honesty. Theodore approached, brows furrowed, a mix of disdain and reluctance painted across his features. "This isn't the time, Jack. You know the speech isn't going to change anything." Jack felt the heat of frustration rise within him. "It can change everything. Mary's right. We need to hear these stories. You don't have to agree, but you can't just run away." Theodore shook his head, his features hardening. "You don't know what you're asking. I don't think this kind of conversation is worth starting. It leads to chaos. That's the problem." Jack's voice cracked slightly, revealing his raw emotion. "You're scared of chaos, but maybe that chaos is necessary. We can't bear to live in a world where silence is the only answer." Behind them, the atmosphere grew thick with tension. Jack could feel the weight of expectant stares and curious whispers. He caught a glimpse of Mary standing tall, her eyes urging him forward. "What would you have us do? Stay quiet because it's easier?" Jack pressed on, taking a step closer, his gaze unwavering. "Is that how we honor the people who suffered?" Theodore's face shifted momentarily, caught between the lines of disbelief and dawning realization. "You think she can just say whatever she wants and it will make a difference? There are consequences." Jack breathed deeply, his chest tightening. "Maybe so. But those consequences shouldn't drive us into silence. We owe it to those who came before us. Their sacrifices, their stories, they matter." With that, the room exhaled collectively. Some heads nodded in agreement, and Jack could feel a shift in the atmosphere. It was as if Mary's courage had finally ignited a spark in even the most skeptical hearts. Theodore's expression softened just a fraction, but it was enough for Jack to notice. "I didn't come here to argue," Theodore finally admitted, his voice quieter, opening a door that had previously seemed firmly shut. "Then let us invite conversation instead," Jack proposed earnestly. "You don't have to agree with Mary's story, but don't turn your back on it either. We need to talk about these things, not dismiss them." A tense silence followed, and Jack could sense the collective breath of the crowd, each person leaning in, some hand over mouths, some eyes glistening with unshed tears. The ground felt shaky underfoot, but in that moment, Jack was resolute. "We can't ignore our truths anymore, Theodore. Not if we want to heal," Jack urged, looking directly at him. "Join us." A flicker of resolve crossed Theodore's face, but before he could respond, Mary stepped forward, opening her arms wide. "Please, don't run away from this moment. We're all here to listen. We're all here to grow. As the crowd rustled, a heartwarming murmur spread. The connection was undeniable. Jack felt the weight of uncertainty lift, replaced by the palpable energy of possibility, yet as Theodore's gaze turned between Mary and Jack, hesitation flickered again. Would he embrace this opportunity for change? Would he find the courage to bridge the gap? Before long, apprehension hung in the balance, a moment pregnant with potential echoes of the past, rippling into the future. Jack's heart raced. What would Theodore decide? And just as Jack prepared for another plea, he felt a sudden jolt of unease as the doors swung wide open. A new figure stepped inside, and with them, a new storm approached. The room fell into a stunned silence as a figure stepped through the door, the unexpected arrival slicing through the tension like a knife. It was a woman, tall, statuesque, with an unmistakable air of authority. She wore a tailored suit that seemed to ripple with her every movement, her expression a mix of curiosity and concern. Everyone turned toward her, whispers circling like a slow-moving tide. Jack's heart raced again, but this time the anxiety came with a hint of intrigue. Who was she? What was her purpose here? The woman scanned the room, her piercing gaze landing on Jack first, then shifting to Theodore. I heard there was a conversation happening, and I wanted to be a part of it, she said, her voice smooth and confident. My name is Clara, and I believe we need to talk about change. Jack seized the opportunity, feeling the tension shift yet again, this time towards something promising. We were just discussing the need for openness, he said, taking a step forward. People have stories that need to be shared, stories about pain, resilience, and hope. Clara nodded, her eyes glinting with understanding. Yes, stories are powerful. They can connect us, even when we think we're worlds apart. The room stirred. Jack's chest filled with unearned courage, a surge of hope springing forth. But this can't just be about discussion anymore. We have to act, he urged. We have to take those stories and put them into action. Otherwise, this moment it could slip right through our fingers. Theodore remained silent, but his eyes had softened, glancing between Jack and Clara. The flicker of hesitation in him seemed to darken, as Clara took a step towards him. And you, she said, her voice steady but gentle, you have a unique position in this community. You could be a leader in this change. Don't underestimate the power of your voice. His mouth opened slightly as if searching for the words, but nothing came. Jack could see the weight of the years pressing down on him, years of managing, suppressing, and dodging conversations that should have happened long ago. Clara caught this moment, the vulnerability hanging in the air like a thick fog. We all have our stories, Theodore, and they deserve to be told. You've been hiding behind your role for too long. It's time to acknowledge not just your truth, but the truths of those around you. Are you ready to join this journey of empowerment? The crowd leaned in, entranced by this unexpected turn. Jack's pulse quickened. What if we could make a movement, right here, right now? He suggested, his excitement bubbling uncontainably. What if we shared our stories, created a platform for others, and made sure everyone had a voice? The murmurs grew louder in agreement. The energy of the crowd began to flourish, and Jack could see sparks in their eyes, hope igniting where doubt once resided, but as the atmosphere began to brighten with potential, something shifted within Clara. A shadow flickered across her face for a moment, barely noticeable yet profound. Be careful, Jack, she warned softly. Change isn't always welcomed. Maybe it's time we challenge that, Jack said firmly, intent echoing in his voice. Let us make sure no one is allowed to turn back. Suddenly, Theodore straightened, the weight of a decision pressing on him. Okay, he muttered finally, his voice hoarse but steady. I'll listen. I'll try. A wave of relief washed over Jack, but before he could respond, Clara turned sharply. Her expression changed, focus sharpening. But first, there's something you all need to prepare for. Someone else is coming, and they might just change everything. The crowd fell silent once more. Apprehension mingled with a growing sense of curiosity as they awaited her next words. Who was this new figure? What could they possibly bring to an already charged moment? As Jack took a breath, glancing at Theodore, the uncertainty hung heavy in the air. It was becoming clear that the journey was only beginning, and the stakes were rising with each passing moment. What revelation awaited them next? The ripple of anticipation swept through the audience as Clara stood tall, her focus unyielding. We've reached a tipping point here, she said, the thickness of urgency punctuating her words. Every voice matters, every experience shared could shift perspectives. But the next person stepping through that door holds the power to amplify it all. Jack turned to Mary, his heart racing. Who could that be? He thought, sweeping his gaze back toward the entrance. He felt time suspend in an electric hush. As if on cue, the door swung open again, and a familiar figure stepped through the threshold. It was Morgan, a local activist known for her passionate speeches and unwavering commitment to social justice. The gasps around Jack were palpable. This was someone people respected, someone who commanded attention with her presence. Morgan scanned the room, her fierce gaze landing on Mary first, and Jack felt the magnetic energy draw tighter. I heard there was a conversation about truth happening here, she declared, her voice ringing clear and confident. I've come to join you, to listen and to share. With her arrival, hope bloomed like a sunflower reaching toward the sun. Jack exhaled, feeling the earlier tension transform into something supportive. Morgan opened a door to a broader dialogue, bridging gaps with grace. Today is a chance to embrace those stories we've been afraid to tell, she encouraged, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. The stories that need to be heard. In a heartbeat, the atmosphere shifted again, the crowd leaned in, drawn by her authenticity. Every one of us has felt marginalized at some point. Every one of us has lived a part of a story that matters, Morgan urged, gesturing around the room. This is more than just conversation. This is a movement. Jack felt his chest swell with pride as he glanced at Mary. She stood taller, the weight of uncertainty lifting. Together, they were nurturing a wild hope, each story, every experience colliding with collective determination to instigate change. As Morgan's passionate speech unfolded, Jack seized the moment. That's exactly right. He chimed, raising his voice above the hum that had quickly replaced silence. This is about building bridges, not walls. About connection over division. About acknowledging the realities we all face. This is our chance to shift the narrative. The crowd erupted in applause, and he turned to see Mary nodding vigorously, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Jack felt a fierce joy swell. This was it. They were on the cusp of something profound, but in the midst of the excitement, he couldn't overlook the wary glances exchanged in the corner, where Theodore stood watching, reluctant yet intrigued. Jack's heart thundered as he sensed Theodore's internal battle. Could he follow through with this newfound resolve? Wrapping up her speech, Morgan looked straight at Theodore. You have a role to play here, too. It's not just about listening, it's about participating. We need you. Your perspective matters, your voice matters. The room paused, everyone waiting, a palpable wave of anticipation swirling as all eyes were on Theodore. The challenge to step forward loomed large, like the weight of the moon straining against the night sky. Theodore cleared his throat, his voice heavy yet contemplative. I never thought about it like this. I always assumed. He trailed off, and Jack took a daring step closer. Assumed our society was built this way and that change was dangerous. But you're right, Morgan. Change isn't only necessary, it is vital. Jack felt hope spark anew as he exchanged glances with Mary. They both recognized the shift unfolding. He leaned in. It's going to take courage from all of us. But facing this truth head-on is the only way forward. To everyone's surprise, Theodore nodded slowly, his expression softening. If this is what we need, then I'm in. I want to be part of this movement for change. The room erupted once again, cheers and applause filling the space like a celebration of shared belief and connection. Jack's heart soared, lightened by the collective. Resolve that fortified the atmosphere around them. As cheers echoed, Morgan stepped forward, her eyes shimmering with pride. Thank you for making a choice to stand together, for stepping into the unknown. This is just the beginning. Jack turned to look at Mary, whose face radiated a mixture of joy and disbelief. They were finally on a shared path, with the world stretched before them like a blank canvas waiting to be painted, but before they could bask in the moment, Clara cleared her throat, bringing focus back to the heart of the conversation. We need to create a foundation for what we're starting here: our lives, our stories. They deserve a platform. A movement with purpose. Everyone murmured in agreement, voices weaving together like threads knitting a tapestry of hope. Jack's chest tightened with excitement. Let us establish a community organization dedicated to sharing these stories. We can create workshops, bring people together to facilitate open discussions. We'll create safe spaces for everyone. Mary stepped closer, her voice unwavering. It's time we honor every unique story, every experience that colors our community. Let us hear each other, uplift each other. Jack could feel the energy lifting the walls they all fought against together. This was transformation, unity blooming like flowers after rain. As everyone began brainstorming ideas, Jack thought about the countless lives they would inspire, the changes they would initiate. He finally felt a buzzing connection, a heartbeat that resonated with the promise of progress, but in that moment of elation, he also recognized that the path ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, hurdles to leap over. It was still a world filled with unspoken fears, unknowns ready to rear their heads. Yet, they stood united: Jack, Mary, Theodore, Morgan, Clara, and a growing crowd of believers. It felt as if the sun had finally broken free of gathering clouds, shining brightly, illuminating the way forward. With hearts ignited and determination weaving them together, they leaned into their truths. Their stories were just beginning to unfold, and together, they would make sure everyone was heard. Now was their moment. The movement was ignited, and as the room buzzed, Jack's voice rang clear: let us write this new chapter together. The joy and hope swarmed around them, an electric atmosphere igniting their next steps. One thing was clear: they were not just changing themselves, they were changing the world around them, and this was just the start. That if you believe in the power of stories and the beauty of transformation, this is the time to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, comment your reactions and feelings about this incredible journey, and how you believe we can continue this important conversation. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Let us stand together and make our voices heard.